stakeholders?
Just
Like
key stakeholders.
stakeholders.
Key,
Key
no, I'm
stakeholders.
talking about the people who pay the rates, not special ones. Citizens. I think we need to look at that.
Oh, it could be here.
Not key stakeholders, whoever they may deign to be.
Yeah, I think there's room, obviously, to have meetings that involve organised and representative groups, but equally there's room to have meetings where any member of the public is able to come along. And we were having that discussion, I think, just a little bit earlier, Councillor, that there will be 17 meetings where any or all members of the public can come along, but councillors should feel free themselves to convene any meetings if they deem that necessary in terms of wider consultation and agreement from council that reasonable costs of such meetings would be paid for.
No, I heard that, Mr Mayor, but the point I'm trying to make is it's fine, I could jack up a meeting and meet with people who want to talk to me. It won't make any difference. It's the governing body, including yourself, that makes the decisions. And the ratepayers of Auckland, or the ones that have been writing to me, feel that they need that process restored, which was a key part of local government and interaction between councils and ratepayers, and that's been lost. And I think we need to give some thought to putting that meeting or that type of meeting back into the mix. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rossclough.
Yeah, sorry, there's no question. It's just follow up for Daniel's query there about local boards. So item 55 on page 13 referred to a meeting that Matthew and I had with the local board chairs. We made an undertaking that Councillor Simpson and myself and Matthew would go out and speak to the 4 clusters of local boards, which would meaning all the local board members would come to those cluster meetings where we would go over the same presentation again to just inform them of the state of our finances and what 2% means and 3.5% means, etc. So they are going to be late March, early April. They're not in the schedule.
Thank you for that elucidation. That's very helpful. I've got Councillor Linda Cooper next.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Just on page 48 around the implementation process of the living wage, I find that quite nebulous for the community to understand, and my question is, under the current LTP it was $25 million savings, then with another 0.5% shaved off it made it to 42 million. And then we're saying it's going to be 17 million or maybe another couple of million this year and another 7 odd in the next couple of years. And it says here that the next 3 years through efficiency gains and improved productivity. So
I'm sorry, can I just seek clarification what page you're looking at, Councillor?
48, implementation process.
48 of the supporting document?
Yes, please. Because it is important that people fully understand the implications. So is this meaning that over this next time there's going to have to be $49 million savings? Because if you save it, it doesn't mean you've got it sloshing around. You've actually got to, you're saying we're not going to spend it in one place, but we're going to spend it in another. So I'm just kind of, it's very unclear. It says there how much it's going to be, but when you say through efficiency gains and improved productivity, does that mean now we've got to save $49 million instead of 42? It doesn't really tell us what the actual implications are. It's quite nebulous. Find the money to pay for this.
Can we just check what version of you?
Oh,
Yeah,
one that I've just been given.
I can't find what you're referring to, Linda.
I've just been given it. 48 in the middle. It says here.
Under what paragraph, Linda?
Under implementation process, the second paragraph. It says the implementation methodology. I don't know why we use that language for the general public, but anyway, implementation methodologies can help council to absorb the cost in the next 3 years through efficiency gains and improved productivity. So it's like we're going to magic the money. I don't really...
So that's because staff stay longer when they're paid.
Sorry, can I get an answer from someone?
Yeah.
So I'm happy to...
Matthew, would you like to address that?
So through the chair,
I'd keep it very simple. So we've said in the consultation document, after 3 years, that will cost the organisation around the 7 million mark.
Yep.
And
Annually.
so what we've said is that will be funded out of savings. So the exercise for the organisation is to save an additional
Another
7
7.
million over 3 years in order to fund that. That's all we're saying, nothing more than that.
Yes, but I don't think that tells people what are we going to cut. So that's just my, but well, I suppose we'll see that in the next LTP, what we're going to have to cut for 0.5%, another 0.5% in rates,
Well,
the value of it about.
But I'd like to be more specific, and
Yeah.
perhaps Councillor Newman's question earlier. So in relation to next year's budget, and when you're making final decisions on it, including final decisions following feedback on the living wage, we will bring back the fully refreshed budget position, including how we've managed to face the challenge of around the 2 to 2.5 million savings required
Yes.
to fund a living wage shift for next year, and we will share that information with you. At this stage, we're not expecting that that will include service level impacts, but we will certainly make that very clear to you if it does need to include service level impacts.
Thank you. I think, Mr Chairman, is that we're not telling the public what the impact will be, and that's when we're consulting, I think people need the full, both sides of the story, you know, the full information, because if we have to find another $2.5 million savings in this next year, we've actually had to make a lot of cuts already, but we're asking people to vote on an idea, but with no actual facts other than how much it's going to cost, not where we're going to find the savings. Thank you.
I think the dual commitment is clear. One is if the living wage is brought in, which I hope it is, what the cost will be, and then our clear intention that this will come out of savings in the same way, I guess, that reducing the annual rate increase from 3.5% to 2.5% would come out of savings. Those savings will be made in a multitude of areas, and they will, in due course, as they are found and where they are found, be spelt out. One of the clear directions to council officials, though, that we have given is that we are looking for efficiency savings without detracting from the quality of the services that we're provided. That is the direction that we've given, and the officials will come back with the specifics of how and where they can find those savings. And that will, I've no doubt, be right across the board in a variety of different areas. Next caller is Councillor Wayne Walker.
Sure. I think the suggestion that Councillor Lee makes about opening the opportunity for people other than key stakeholders to present to the governing body is a very fair one. If we look at what's happened in the previous term of council and the one before that, what we're seeing is a steady slip-off, a reduction, I'd suggest, in the number of people that are fronting up. This year we're seeing a loss of local boards offering an opportunity for people to front up, and you know, a significant number of them. We could be accused of becoming more out of touch with the people of Auckland. Quite obviously, in principle, one of the concepts that we've been putting through successive terms now is the notion of one Auckland, that we're all in it together. So progressively we've moved away from the legacy councils.
So, sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt, Councillor, but I was I was just focusing on questions at this stage, and I'm sorry, this is a statement.
So I'll come to a question then. So my question is, given a circumstance where we're going to know who the people are that want to front up and speak with us, and let's make the assumption that people have got the opportunity to come in here, into town, so we're not having to go out to them, could we not consider the opportunity of expanding things beyond key stakeholders? And just who are key stakeholders as compared to somebody that may have a principled issue out there in the public that might be local but might also go to council as a whole? So my question is, can we expand the opportunity when we know what we're dealing with?
Thank you. If I can ask the Chief Executive to address that.
Yeah, thanks, through you, Chair. Look, the Act was changed a small number of years ago to create more flexible. So pre that law change, you are essentially bound into a formal hearings process, and hundreds of people, the only way they could have a say was to ask to have their submission heard at your formal hearings. At the time the change in the law occurred, part of that was, I think, recognising at a national level and then locally by political debate that that isn't the most effective way to engage with the community. So by majority, I think for the last 2 annual plans, you have dispensed with formal hearings. And if you're going to go back to formal hearings, you've really got to give every Aucklander that opportunity. And what we're saying is that's probably not the greatest way. Our advice is that's not the greatest way to get the feedback. There's a wider variety of methods now. And if you open the door for an individual ratepayer or an organisation, you've kind of got to do it for everyone. And that would mean revamping the program that we've outlined to you, because it will not be sustainable. And what we do is we focus in on those formal hearings and the larger feedback mechanisms occurring in your LTP year, where you're really setting the broad program for 3 years.
Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Chair. I think it was clarifying something about the implementation process. Just, I think we may have been reading that wrong. It says, while this is an increased cost to council's salary budget, the implementation methodologies can help the council to absorb the costs in the next 3 years through efficiency gains and improved productivity. I thought that was referring to the fact that over time the living wage reduces HR costs and maybe keeps people in council in the jobs for longer. I don't know if that was directly...
That is set out in the document that some of the savings very clearly are made through reduced absenteeism, through greater productivity, reduced turnover, and there are studies in there that demonstrate that there are concrete benefits in that regard from the living wage, as well as any additional costs that might come through the wage budget. Councillor Newman, you have a second question.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just the matter that was raised by Councillor Mike Lee and by Councillor Walker, I think Wayne Walker, is quite a pertinent one. And that's really is how does one become a key stakeholder? Because actually the submissions that we receive from our constituents are key, and everybody who wishes to lodge a submission, I would imagine they would consider themselves to be pretty key to this process. But somehow we end up with a group of people or a group of interests that become key, and everyone else goes to have your say. And I would imagine that the key stakeholder, I could almost name them, you know, it'll be the EMA and probably council and a few other bits and pieces, and they become the key stakeholders according to whose definition. Surely I can understand that some people will prefer a more informal have your say process, but if someone wishes to come and participate in a formal hearing before the full council, then they should be entitled to do so. And I imagine there'll be a lot of people who will have a view, for example, on the living wage, who will probably want to come and submit as an individual before the full council as part of a structured hearing, and they should be entitled to do so if they wish to. And so I think that this is a matter, I mean, I would like the officers to elaborate exactly on what is a key stakeholder and how does that decision get made as to whether you are or are not a key stakeholder.
A beginner's guide to becoming a key stakeholder. So
Can we, well, just before I ask officials to outline, there will be a list of the stakeholders on it. If I can refer councillors, I'm sure you've read it already, to the document that we are looking at in terms of item 11 and the stages of pre-consultation and the way in which we are recommending that we reach out to groups and individuals that we normally wouldn't reach. I think my experience has been, and certainly even in the governing body here, when we have public input, we are not hearing from a broad cross-section of New Zealanders. We're hearing from similar people speaking time and again to us. And each day, you and I go out and we try to outreach to the widest possible range of people.